3 days after the humans left, High Counselor Vexari called an emergency meeting. The massive reptilian paced at the front of the chamber, his tail swishing nervously behind him. Council members from 30 species filled the room, their voices creating a buzz of worried conversation. Vexari raised a clawed hand and the room fell silent. "Our intelligence ships report unusual activity in the Sol system," he said, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. "The humans are moving ships to their outer planets. Their military vessels are running drills throughout their system." Linda Harris, the Zoltan representative, scoffed. Her body glowed with blue energy that pulsed with her emotions. "Let them play with their toys," she said. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their best warships would be easy for us to destroy." Admiral Susan Grant raised one of her 4 tentacles. The Proxima Coalition admiral was the only one in the room who had actually fought humans. "I would not underestimate them," she warned. Her voice translated from the series of clicks and whistles that was her native language. "During the Proxima incident, one human ship, the Defiant, disabled 3 of our cruisers before it retreated." "A lucky shot," Harris dismissed. "Their simple nuclear engines and basic weapons are nothing compared to our gravity drives and energy shields." Meanwhile, on Earth, Defense Secretary Alan Rodriguez met with United Earth Government President Maria Nelson. They were in the war room deep under New Geneva. The round room had no windows, only screens showing space around Earth and its colonies. On the main display was a detailed plan labeled Project Prometheus. "The Council thinks our withdrawal shows weakness," Nelson said. She was a tall woman, with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Rodriguez nodded. "Yes, their spies have only seen what we wanted them to see." "And our real fleet?" Rodriguez pressed a button and the display changed to show hidden shipyards around Pluto and its moons. "The quantum displacement drives are ready. We can install them on all stealth vessels right away. The manufacturing centers in the Kuiper Belt are fully operational." Nelson watched a simulation showing Earth's true military power. Technologies developed in secret, defensive systems hidden on distant moons and production facilities scattered throughout the outer solar system. "They think we're having a tantrum," Nelson said quietly. "In reality, we're preparing to show them what humans can really do." "Ambassador Miller will be home tomorrow," Rodriguez said. "Then we can begin Phase 2. "Good. The Council has bullied other young species for too long. It's time someone taught them a lesson." Back on Nexus Station, Admiral Grant tried again to warn the Council. "The humans are not like other young species," she insisted. "They developed in isolation, always preparing for threats. All their history is filled with conflict and innovation born from struggle." Vexari's yellow eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" "I'm suggesting that we have no idea what technology they might have kept hidden from us. No species shares all their military capabilities during first contact." "Ridiculous," Harris interrupted. "Our scans of their system show only basic fusion technology and simple kinetic weapons. Perhaps that's all they wanted us to see," Grant countered. The debate continued, but most of the Council sided with Harris. They believed humans were primitive and no real threat to galactic peace. 5 days later, that belief was shattered. The first sign of trouble came from a Drakari mining operation in the Epsilon Eridani system. At Oro 300 hours Galactic Standard Time, all communication with the facility suddenly stopped. When an investigation fleet arrived, they found something impossible. The entire operation, a facility with over 300 workers, heavy equipment, and valuable ore, was completely empty. Everything was in perfect order. Meals sat on tables, half-eaten. Work terminals were still running. But not a single person remained. Within hours, similar reports flooded in from outposts across sectors bordering human space. Communication relays went dark. Supply ships changed course without explanation. Navigation beacons began broadcasting wrong coordinates. No destruction, no casualties, just precise surgical removal of key assets. The Council convened in panic. Admiral Grant addressed the assembly. "The humans are using asymmetric warfare," she explained. "They're avoiding direct conflict while systematically undermining our presence in disputed regions. This is outrageous, Vexari roared, slamming his fist on the table. We must respond with overwhelming force. Against what target? Grant asked calmly. Our sensors haven't detected a single human warship. All our scans of Earth show normal activity. 2 light-years away, Commander Frank Wilson stood on the bridge of the UES Valiant. The ship hung in space near a major Drakari fuel depot, yet remained completely invisible to the alien sensors. The Valiant was the first ship equipped with the quantum displacement drive, technology that shifted the vessel slightly out of phase with normal space-time. To conventional sensors, the ship simply didn't exist. Status report, Wilson ordered. Nancy Turner, the communications officer, looked up from her station. We're intercepting their transmissions, sir. The Council is in chaos. The Arksur are sending their 3rd fleet to secure their border systems, but they're spreading themselves thin. Wilson nodded, satisfied. Just as we predicted. He turned to his second-in-command. Prepare for Phase 2. Tomorrow we show ourselves. The next day, at exactly 1200 hours Galactic Standard Time, human vessels appeared simultaneously in 27 different systems across Council space. Each ship performed the same action, a precise weapons demonstration against an uninhabited moon or asteroid. The display of firepower was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. After exactly 3 minutes, all ships vanished again. The message was clear. We can strike anywhere, anytime, and you cannot detect us coming. On Earth, President Nelson received the mission report with grim satisfaction. Send the message, she told Rodriguez. Tell the Council we're ready to talk again, but this time on our terms. Rodriguez nodded and transmitted the communication to Nexus Station. In the Council chamber. Vexari read the human message with scales that had lost their healthy shine. The mighty Arksur looked suddenly older. They wish to return to negotiations, he announced to the silent room. On what terms? Harris asked, her blue glow dimmed with worry. They don't list demands, Vexari said. They simply state that the human ambassador will return in 3 days, and they expect the full council to be present. Admiral Grant's tentacles formed a pattern that in her culture indicated sad amusement. I warned you, she said quietly. The humans weren't retreating. They were changing the game. The massive chamber of Nexus Station hummed with the voices of 30 different alien species. Tall windows showed the stars and the swirling purple gas giant the station orbited. Ambassador John Miller sat straight in his chair at the human delegation's table. His gray suit was perfect, his face calm, but inside he felt a storm growing. For 2 Earth years he had come to this room. For 2 years he had spoken politely, smiled at insults, and tried to win fair treatment for humanity. And for 2 years, the Galactic Council had moved the goalposts, changed the terms, and treated humans like children. Today would be different. The Drakari ambassador finished speaking. He was tall and thin with 6 eyes arranged in a circle on his face. His skin was gray-blue and seemed to shimmer under the lights. And so, the Drakari said, his translator making his clicking language into smooth English, humans must accept these new limits on their expansion. The Orion Arm is simply too valuable to allow such a young, aggressive species free access. Perhaps in another century, when humans have proven themselves more civilized. Miller glanced at his team. Kate Phillips, the science advisor, was looking down at her tablet, her blonde hair hiding her expression. But Miller knew she was angry. Greg Martinez, the military liaison, was staring straight ahead, his jaw tight. Wendy Alvarez, the cultural attaché, met Miller's eyes and gave a small nod. It was time. Miller stood up. The chamber quieted as attention turned to him. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored representatives of the Galactic Council, Miller began. His voice was calm but carried throughout the room. For 2 Earth years, humanity has tried to negotiate in good faith. We have given up mining rights in the Tau Ceti system. We have accepted limits on our expansion into the Orion Arm. We have even agreed to reduce our fleet size. He paused, looking around the room. Some aliens shifted uncomfortably. Others watched with what passed for smiles on their strange faces. thinking he was about to give in again. Yet at every turn we face disrespect. The terms keep changing. Your contempt is barely hidden. Miller began gathering his papers and tablets. His team started doing the same. Therefore, by the authority given to me by the United Earth government, I announce humanity's withdrawal from these peace talks. We will return to Sol and decide our own path forward. The chamber erupted in noise. Some aliens jumped to their feet. Others shouted in their various languages. The translation system struggled to keep up, creating a jumble of angry words. The Arksur High Counselor, a massive reptilian with dark green scales and yellow eyes, pounded a heavy fist on his table. Ambassador Miller, this is highly irregular. You cannot simply leave negotiations. Miller looked at him calmly. Watch me. The human delegation stood as one and walked toward the exit. The Zoltan representative, a being made of glowing blue, energy contained in a humanoid shape, called after them. This is madness. You doom yourselves. The council will not tolerate such disrespect. Miller didn't turn back. The four humans walked out of the chamber, their footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Guards at the door stepped aside, uncertain what to do when faced with departing diplomats rather than invaders. In the corridor outside, Martinez finally spoke. That felt good. 2 years of being talked down to by those. Save it for the ship, Miller said quietly. We're still on their station. They walked in silence to the docking bay where their transport waited. The human vessel was small compared to the alien ships around it. The council had insisted that humans arrive in a vessel that showed their proper place in galactic affairs. Once inside and safely away from any listening devices, Alvarez let out a long breath. Do you think they bought it? The angry exit? Miller smiled for the first time that day. They did. They think we're giving up or throwing a tantrum. They have no idea. Phillips activated a secure terminal, and the screen showed the face of Defense Secretary Alan Rodriguez back on Earth. It's done, Miller reported. We've withdrawn exactly as planned. The council believes we're retreating in frustration. Rodriguez nodded on screen. Good. President Nelson is preparing to address the United Earth government now. How did the council react? Exactly as intelligence predicted. Shock, some gloating, and absolutely no suspicion of our true intentions. Perfect. Rodriguez leaned closer to the camera. The final shipments to the Kuiper Belt facilities were completed last night. The stealth fleet is on standby. As soon as you're back in Sol space, we move to Phase 2. Miller nodded. We'll be home in 6 days at standard speed. Any faster? Might make them suspicious. Understood. Safe journey, Ambassador. Rodriguez out. As the screen went dark, Miller turned to his team. For 2 years, we let them believe humans were just another young species to be managed and controlled. We showed them outdated ships, talked about our nuclear fusion drives and our kinetic weapons, while they smugly spoke of their gravitic propulsion and energy shields. Martinez smiled. Little do they know our actual military capabilities. Or the factories we've built in the Kuiper Belt, Phillips added. Or the quantum displacement technology, Alvarez said quietly. Miller looked out the viewport as their ship pulled away from Nexus Station. The massive structure grew smaller behind them, its lights twinkling against the backdrop of the purple gas giant. They think this is a retreat, he said. They're about to learn it's a strategic withdrawal. The council has grown fat and lazy, using their technological head start to bully younger species. They've forgotten what it's like to fight for survival. Earth spent its first centuries in space preparing for threats, Martinez said. Building in secret, developing technologies the council can't imagine. And now? Phillips asked, though they all knew the answer. Miller's eyes remained fixed on the shrinking station. Now we show them why you should never back humans into a corner. We didn't come this far, from cave paintings to starships, by giving up when things got difficult. The ship's engines hummed as they accelerated to cruising speed, leaving Nexus Station behind. For now, the council would celebrate what they saw as a human defeat. They would laugh about the primitive species that had stormed out of negotiations. In 6 days, the first phase of humanity's real plan would begin. And no one in that chamber would be laughing then. 3 days later, Ambassador John Miller walked into the council chamber again. The room fell silent as he entered. Behind him came his team, Kate Phillips, Greg Martinez, and Wendy Alvarez, looking calm and professional. Miller noted the changes immediately. The council members who had once looked down on humans now watched with wary eyes. Some seemed afraid. Others looked angry. None looked confident anymore. High Counselor Vexari spoke first. Ambassador Miller, the council and welcomes your return. The proud reptilian struggled with the words. Miller nodded and took his seat at the human table. Let us be clear, he said. What you witnessed was a small demonstration of human capabilities. We showed restraint. No lives were lost, no permanent damage was done. Harris, the Zoltan representative, leaned forward. Her blue energy form flickered with emotion. How is this possible? Our scans showed your technology was far behind ours. Miller allowed himself a small smile. We showed you what we wanted you to see. He nodded to Phillips, who activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed the human quantum displacement drive, a device that allowed ships to exist slightly out of phase with normal space-time. For 200 years, Miller continued, humanity prepared for first contact. We hoped to meet friends. We planned for enemies. While you saw our civilian ships with standard fusion drives, our military developed this technology in secret. Admiral Grant's tentacles moved in a pattern of understanding. You were never defenseless. No, Miller agreed. But we wanted peace. We still do. That's why I've returned today. He pressed a button and the hologram changed to show a new proposal. It outlined fair boundary agreements, resource sharing plans, and security protocols. Humanity doesn't seek dominance, Miller explained. We want equal treatment, respect for our territory, and the right to develop without artificial limits. The council members studied the proposal. Many seemed surprised by how reasonable the terms were. There is one condition that cannot be changed, Miller added. His voice grew firmer. The practice of classifying new spacefaring species as protectorates without their consent must end. No more treating developing civilizations as resources to be exploited or controlled. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The protectorate system had been used for thousands of years. It allowed powerful species to control access to space and resources. You dare dictate how the council governs? Harris challenged, but her voice lacked its usual force. We advocate for those who cannot yet speak for themselves, Miller replied calmly. Just as we would have appreciated an advocate before we reached the stars. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Valiant hovering undetected near Nexus Station, Commander Frank Wilson monitored the proceedings through a secure channel. They're actually listening, Nancy Turner remarked from her communications station. I never thought I'd see the Arcsur look humble. Wilson nodded. Fear is a powerful teacher. But the ambassador is right. We don't want dominance, just fairness. The ISIR ship's sensors officer Paul Bennett called out from his station. Sir, detecting movement from the Drakari fleet. 3 heavy cruisers are changing course toward the station. Wilson frowned. Intentions? Unclear, sir. But they're powering weapons systems. Wilson considered his options. The Drakari were the most aggressive council species known for solving problems with force. If they were planning to attack during negotiations, battle stations, he ordered, prepare to shift into normal space if needed, and alert Earth. Back in the council chamber, the debate continued. Some members supported the human proposal. Others resisted change. Vexari was trying to find middle ground when an aide rushed in and whispered in his ear. The High Counselor's scales paled. Ambassador Miller, there appears to be a situation developing. 3 Drakari warships are approaching the station with weapons active. Miller's expression didn't change. Are they responding to orders from the Drakari government? Their commander claims they act independently to protect the council from human manipulation. Before anyone could respond further, the station shook slightly. Alarm sounds blared. The Drakari ships have fired warning shots, announced a station controller over the intercom. They demand the humans surrender and face judgment for their actions. Miller exchanged glances with his team. Martinez looked, ready for a fight. Alvarez remained calm. Phillips was already working on her tablet. "High Counselor," Miller said calmly, "I recommend you inform those ships that firing on a diplomatic station during peace talks is an act of war." Vexari hesitated. "They may not listen to me. Then perhaps they'll listen to someone else." At that moment, the space around Nexus Station seemed to ripple. 5 human warships appeared, surrounding the 3 Drakari cruisers. The human vessels were sleek and dark, with no visible engine glow. They had simply materialized from nowhere. The station sensors officer reported in shock. 5 human vessels detected. They were just suddenly there, on the command deck of the UES Valiant. Now visible among the 5 human ships, Commander Wilson opened a channel to the Drakari. "Drakari vessels, this is Commander Frank Wilson of the United Earth Government. Power down your weapons and withdraw from this sector immediately. This is your only warning." The Drakari commander responded with anger. "We do not recognize your authority, human. The Council has been too soft on your kind. We will show you your proper place." The lead Drakari ship fired at the Valiant. The energy beam passed straight through the human vessel as it shifted partially out of phase, causing no damage. Wilson sighed. "They never learn." He turned to his weapons officer. "Disable their engines only, no casualties." Precision beams shot from the human ships, striking the Drakari vessel's engine sections with surgical accuracy. Within seconds, all 3 alien ships drifted powerless in space. In the council chamber, the members watched the sensor display in stunned silence. The entire confrontation had lasted less than a minute. Miller turned back to the council. "Now, as I was saying about our proposal for a more equitable galactic community." Hours later, after the initial shock had worn off, real negotiations finally began. For the first time, the council treated humanity as equals. Some members even looked to Miller with newfound respect. As the session ended for the day, Admiral Grant approached Miller privately. "You could have conquered us," she said simply. "Why didn't you?" Miller considered the question. "Because that's not who we want to be. Humanity has a violent history. We've fought ourselves for centuries. When we reached the stars, we hoped to do better." Grant's tentacles formed a pattern of respect. "Most species who develop your phase technology use it for conquest. We use it for protection," Miller replied. "There's a difference." As Miller walked away, Grant watched him with new understanding. The humans weren't dangerous because of their technology. They were dangerous because they had principles they were willing to fight for, and the wisdom to know when not to fight at all. 2 weeks passed. The negotiations continued daily on Nexus Station. What had once been tense, one-sided meetings were now balanced discussions. The humans no longer sat quietly while being lectured. They spoke as equals, and the council listened. Into orbit around the station, 5 human ships remained visible. Everyone knew there were likely more, hidden by their phase technology, watching silently. On the final day of talks, Miller and his team entered the chamber for what they hoped would be the last session. The room was more crowded than usual. Representatives from 7 protectorate species had been invited to attend, the first time they had been allowed in the council chamber as observers rather than supplicants. Miller nodded to them respectfully. These were civilizations that had achieved spaceflight more recently than humans, but had been quickly placed under council protection, which really meant control. High Counselor Vexari called the session to order. "We have reviewed the final terms of what will be called the Terran Accords. The Council is prepared to vote on acceptance." Miller stood. "Before the vote, I wish to address the matter of the protectorate species." A murmur ran through the chamber. This had been the most contentious issue in the negotiations. "As agreed," Miller continued, "all current protectorate species will be given the choice to remain under council guidance or to claim full independence. Future emerging species will be offered assistance, but not control." Harris of the Zoltan Confederation spoke up. This overturns thousands of years of established order. Yes, Miller agreed simply. It does. The vote was taken. By a narrow margin, the Terran Accords passed. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council had been forced to change its fundamental structure. As Miller and his team prepared to return to Earth with the signed agreement, Vexari approached him privately. "You've changed everything," the High Counselor said. "Not through conquest but through leverage and principle," Miller nodded. "Humanity could have chosen a different path." "Why didn't you?" Vexari asked. "With your technology, you could have dominated the Council, and eventually faced rebellion ourselves," Miller replied. "We learned from our own history that empires always fall. We prefer to build something that can last." 3 days later, the Earth government held a public ceremony in the Grand Plaza of New Geneva. Thousands gathered to witness the formal acceptance of the Terran Accords. Millions more watched via global broadcast. President Nelson stood at the podium, the document displayed beside her. Representatives from the Council and former Protectorate species filled the stage behind her. "Today marks a new chapter in humanity's journey among the stars," she announced. "Not as conquerors or subjects, but as equal members of a galactic community founded on mutual respect and cooperation." She turned to address the alien representatives directly. "We withdrew from peace talks not to abandon diplomacy, but to reshape it. Sometimes you must leave the table to build a better one." Later that evening, Miller found himself on a balcony overlooking the city lights. Admiral Grant joined him, her hover platform bringing her tentacled form to human height. "Your people celebrate," she observed, "but they don't fully understand what you achieved." Miller smiled. "What do you mean?" "Most species would have used their advantage for territorial gain or resources. You used yours to change the rules themselves." Her tentacles formed a pattern Miller had learned meant deep respect. "It's why the Proxima Coalition will be your strongest ally moving forward." "We'll need allies," Miller said. "The Council voted for change, but many did so reluctantly. Some will resist implementing the Accords." "The Drakari certainly," Grant agreed. "They've already recalled their ambassador in protest." Miller wasn't surprised. The Drakari had the most to lose from the new system. They had built their economy on exploiting resources from Protectorate worlds. "We'll face challenges," he acknowledged. "But for the first time, we'll face them together as equals." On the UES Valiant, now in orbit around Earth, Commander Frank Wilson was briefing his officers on their new assignment. "Starting next week, we begin training missions with ships from 5 former Protectorate species," he explained. "The President has authorized limited sharing of our displacement technology with trusted allies." Nancy Turner raised her hand. "Sir, is that wise? Our tech advantage is what keeps us safe." Wilson understood her concern. "Our advantage was never just technology, Lieutenant. It was that no one knew we had it. That advantage is gone. Now we need a different kind of security, the kind that comes from having friends who share your interests." Paul Bennett, the YAR sensors officer, looked unconvinced. "And if someone uses our tech against us?" "That's always a risk," Wilson admitted. "But keeping it to ourselves doesn't eliminate danger. It just means we face it alone." The next morning, Secretary Rodriguez met with President Nelson in the Oval Office. Reports from across Council space showed mixed reactions to the Accords. "The Arxur and Proxima Coalition are fully on board," Rodriguez reported. "The Zoltan are complying reluctantly. The Drakari," he frowned. "They're reducing diplomatic contact and increasing military patrols along their borders." Nelson wasn't surprised. They were the most aggressive exploiters of the Protectorate system. They have the most to lose. "Should we be concerned?" Rodriguez asked. "Monitor them closely," Nelson decided. "But our focus now is implementation of the Accords and building relationships with our new allies." She walked to the window, looking out at the clear blue sky. Somewhere up there, Council ships and human vessels were beginning joint exercises, something unimaginable just weeks ago. "We took a risk by walking away from those talks," she said quietly. "It could have led to war." It still might, Rodriguez said honestly. The Drakari won't accept change easily. Nelson nodded. Then we need to be ready. But not just with weapons and shields. We need to make this new alliance work so well that opposing it becomes unthinkable. As Earth continued its celebration of the historic agreement, most humans remained unaware of the challenges ahead. But in government offices and military bases, plans were already being made. The withdrawal from peace talks had changed the galaxy forever. Now came the harder part, making that change last. 6 months after the signing of the Terran Accords, representatives from 47 spacefaring civilizations gathered on Earth. It was the first time the Galactic Council had met outside Nexus Station in over 700 years. The meeting took place in the newly built Harmony Dome in New Geneva. The massive structure had been designed to accommodate beings of all sizes and environmental needs. Sections were filled with different atmospheres, temperatures, and gravity settings to ensure every species felt comfortable. President Nelson welcomed the delegates to humanity's homeworld. She stood on the central platform, addressing the largest gathering of alien species ever to visit Earth. This summit marks not an end, but a beginning, she said. We gather not as rulers and subjects, but as equals working toward a shared future. Ambassador Miller, recently appointed as humanity's first High Representative to the reformed Galactic Assembly, took the podium next. The withdrawal of humanity from peace talks last year wasn't a rejection of diplomacy, he told the gathered delegates. It was a rejection of diplomacy without equality. Today we begin a new chapter in galactic history. To everyone's surprise, High Counselor Vexari rose to speak after Miller. The massive reptilian had become an unexpected ally in pushing forward the reforms. We must acknowledge that the council had grown rigid and hierarchical, Vexari admitted. We had confused technological advantage with moral authority. The humans showed us a different way. He looked around the chamber. Their restraint in victory has taught us as much as their strength in confrontation. Not everyone shared this positive outlook. The Drakari delegation sat stiffly in their section, barely participating. They had sent only junior representatives, a clear diplomatic insult. Outside the Harmony Dome, Earth had transformed into a showcase of interspecies cooperation. Ships from dozens of civilizations orbited the planet. In the streets of New Geneva, humans walked alongside aliens of all descriptions. What would have caused panic months ago was now accepted as normal. After the day's formal sessions ended, Miller found himself in a quiet garden area of the dome. He was surprised when a Drakari approached him, not one of the official delegates, but someone wearing the insignia of their science academy. Ambassador Miller, the Drakari said, his translator making his clicks and whistles into smooth English. I am Professor Zexil. May I speak with you privately? Miller nodded, curious. Private meetings with Drakari had become rare since the BOA Accords. What can I do for you, Professor? The Drakari looked around nervously. I come without my government's knowledge. There are things you should know. Miller sat on a bench, gesturing for the alien to join him. Certain factions in the Drakari hierarchy are not accepting the new reality, Zexil explained. They are building weapons, ships designed to counter your phase technology. Miller wasn't surprised. Intelligence had suggested as much. And you're telling me this why? Because not all Drakari want conflict. Many of us, especially in the academic and scientific communities, see the Terran Accords as the beginning of a better future. Zexil's 6 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of emotional distress. A war would destroy everything we might build, together. Miller studied the alien carefully. What are you suggesting? Open more direct channels to Drakari society, not just through our government. Cultural exchanges, scientific cooperation. Show my people there is more to gain from friendship than resistance. Later that night, Miller shared this conversation with President Nelson and Defense Secretary Rodriguez in a secure meeting room. It confirms our intelligence, Rodriguez said. The Drakari military is preparing for possible conflict. Nelson looked thoughtful, but it also confirms something else. They're divided. We may have more potential allies among them than we realized. We need to be prepared for either possibility, Miller suggested. Continue strengthening our defenses and alliances, but also extend more opportunities for cooperation. Nelson nodded. Exactly. We didn't come this far to start a new conflict. In orbit above Earth, ships from different civilizations were conducting joint exercises, the first implementation of the new Mutual Defense Initiative. The UES Valiant, once Earth's most secret weapon, now served as a training vessel. Human. Crews taught trusted allies how to operate shared technology. Commander Frank Wilson watched from the bridge as a Proximan vessel practiced the delicate maneuvers required for phase shifting. They're learning quickly, Admiral Grant observed. Her tentacles moved in a pattern that Wilson had come to recognize as pride. They are, Wilson agreed. How does it feel, seeing others use technology that was once only yours? Grant's translator conveyed her thoughtful tone. Strange but necessary. The old way, each species guarding their advances, led to imbalance and exploitation. This new approach feels right. Wilson looked out at the Earth below, beautiful and blue against the blackness of space. Did you ever imagine it would turn out this way? When you fought against us in the Proxima incident? Never, Grant admitted. The humans I faced then were formidable warriors, but what makes your species truly remarkable isn't your weapons or technology. It's your ability to change the rules of engagement entirely. As night fell over New Geneva, Miller stood on the balcony of the diplomatic residence, watching the lights of ships moving across the sky. President Nelson joined him, offering a cup of coffee. Thinking deep thoughts, Ambassador? She asked. Wondering what comes next, Miller replied. We've changed the balance of power in the galaxy. There will be resistance, challenges. Nelson nodded. Always. But for the first time, we face those challenges with allies. Below them in the garden, representatives from former protectorate, species mingled with council members and human officials. Species that had never spoken as equals were now planning joint scientific missions and cultural exchanges. We could have used our advantage differently, Miller observed. Established human dominance, and eventually face the same rebellion we orchestrated, Nelson replied. No, this way is better. We've created something that can last, a community rather than an empire. Far from Earth, in the depths of Drakari space, warships gathered, for exercises of a different kind, but they were fewer than their leaders had hoped. Already the promise of the new galactic order was pulling their society in different directions. The Galactic Council had indeed realized their mistake, not just in underestimating humanity's capabilities, but in failing to understand that true strength lies in creating systems that don't require domination to function. Sometimes walking away is necessary to build something better.